there's actually a list of supplements that I really recommend that have done just wonders for me. So I can only imagine they'd be great for you. A good quality multivitamin and multi-mineral. Find a brand that you trust. A good brand doesn't necessarily have to be really expensive. Some are just charging you for their advertising. But some of the cheaper ones probably you want to shy away from. Find a good quality one, do some research, find something in a midpoint, kind of a nice midpoint there. You want to, because of the virus, you definitely want to take some additional vitamin B12, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc. Now, vitamin D, I'll just make a note here that if you're not going outside, you're not going to get as much vitamin D from the sun naturally. So you definitely want to take vitamin D. And even if you do go outside, you're still not going to get enough. So you definitely want to take a good quality vitamin D as well as C, B. You also want to take zinc. Zinc is great. It's amazing, especially for viruses, colds. Really, really gives you that edge, especially if you do contract something. So these types of things you want to have before you come into contact with it, really. So I definitely recommend that stuff. Elderberry. Elderberry extract, you could buy it in a syrup. You could buy it in gummy bears. Really good for your immune system, just overall health.
Welcome to Q's Health and Wellness Podcast, your source for living a healthier lifestyle and developing a better mind, body, and soul. Through guidance, tips, and stories of highly successful fitness gurus, athletes, and individuals who are passionate about enhancing all aspects of life, we provide you with the tools to help you take your lifestyle to another level. And now your host, Quinn Mitchell.
Welcome to Q's Health and Wellness Podcast. This is your host, Quinn Mitchell. Today I have Sean Miller. He's a former collegiate athlete, and he's also trying his best to stay active during this tough time in quarantine. How are you doing today?
Hey, pretty good, Mr. Mitchell. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. So how are you doing nowadays with all this quarantine going on? How are you holding up mental health-wise?
Pretty good. It's just it's always a struggle when your regular routine kind of gets thrown awry. But there's a few things that I like to talk about today to keep you healthy, mind, body, and soul. The big thing is, like a lot of people out there, I go to the gym regularly. I like to go swim laps, and that's not happening now. So you really have to change things up. The nice thing about the gym, you have a lot of weight sets. You have a lot of different machines and stuff. You obviously have the elliptical, and as a runner, I ran cross country in college. You put a lot of strain on those joints and muscles when you're running, especially on hard pack concrete or hard pack gravel. So the elliptical's nice, the swimming's nice to still get that workout in, that cardio in, but without having as much impact on the joints. So you might not have to run more than twice a week because you're doing those other things the other days. But with that being changed, there's a few things that I do recommend. Obviously, you might want to start doing some trail running. There's a great hill by my house. If you could find hills, especially if it's gravel, that is a little bit softer, less impact than running on asphalt, concrete. But that might be your only choice to run on asphalt and concrete. One of the best things to run on is grass. So if you could find something like that, I highly recommend it. There's a high school with an outdoor track that's open by where I live, and I run on the grass there, do sprints there. I usually jog 15 minutes there, just on the sidewalk, jog there for a warm up. I do sprints for maybe half an hour, and then I jog back for about half an hour. So that kind of gets my higher intensity in. Then I might go on a trail run on the gravel in the hills for maybe about an hour. But as far as doing the weightlifting, that's something that if you don't have a weight set at home, especially a machine with a multitude of different settings, that could be kind of hard. And those things are expensive. They take a lot of room, and I know that I can't afford one, and I don't have room for one in my apartment. So I really recommend free weights. Free weights are great because you could get a huge amount of different workouts in. Curls, bent row. You could get tricep extension. You could do push-ups where you do the push-up and then you pull the weight, and I forget what that's called, but you could do shoulder press, and then you could do lunges where you do lunges with the curl, lunges with the shoulder press. So you could you can do squats with the shoulder press. Really change it up. Dumbbells. The great thing about them is you don't really need more than one for most of these things. Most of the workouts you could do like at the gym, I might have 35 pounds. I do a curl with one end, do a curl with the other, have two weights.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to save money, just buy one and switch up arms. So there is ways you could save money when buying some of these pieces of equipment. Something I do recommend no matter what, though, is one of these mats. So this is probably one of the cheapest mats you could buy. I think it was like $7. It's very thin. It's not very good, but it's better than nothing. They have better mats out there, and you really want one when you're laying on the ground doing just a whole multitude of different body weight and free weight exercises. So that's always very important. Resistance bands, they're great because essentially you get to do a whole bunch of different workouts. You get to do a whole bunch of different muscle groups, and just whole different parts of the body. They usually come with a little list that shows you kind of everything you could do with them. So very versatile, very cheap, and they usually, when you buy them, you usually have a package of like 3 or 4 of different resistance levels. So those are great. Something regarding running though. So assuming that you normally run on a treadmill and running outside is kind of a new thing for you, or if running outside is a very common thing for you, like it is for me, you'll have a lot of muscle pain. So stretching before and stretching after is very important. I love these stretch straps, and you could go through a litany. I'd say look it up online, but go through a litany of different leg stretches to do with these. They really help out. You don't technically need one of these, but they do really help out. The other thing, when you're on an elliptical or you're on a treadmill, you have the timer there. So you're not going to have that when you're outside. And you could check the time when you leave and check it when you come back, and you have to remember it. A watch with a timer is very important. And I mean, with today's technology, they have ones that measure your heartbeat and the distance you run, GPS watches. But at the very least, just get a standard stopwatch, wristwatch thing. That they really help out. But aside from some of the physical things you could do, this lockdown probably impacts you in a litany of different ways. So I tell you, you definitely want to stay healthy. So I hear so many of these fake news articles saying like, oh, you're in lockdown now, so just eat a bunch of white bread and butter and just sit on the couch and watch Netflix. No, don't do that. It's going to be bad for you. Trust me. You want to be able to bring your health up right now, especially if you're worried about your health concerning the virus. So you definitely want to improve your health on this time off over, being a detriment to it. So there's a bunch of different parts of health. Going from exercise, it gets you easily into nutrition, and a lot of times, if you are eating healthy, good foods, a lot of with vitamins and minerals and stuff, such as fruits and vegetables, you're still going to probably not have as much as your body desires. Your body desires usually a bit more than what you give it. And I'm not saying I'm a nutritionist. I'm not a doctor. I'm a business major, but so I'm not going to be like Bill Gates pretending to be a doctor when I'm not. What I would say though is I researched this extensively, and I know what nutrients and supplements have done for me. About 5 to 7 years ago, when I started taking supplements, I became like Superman. More mental clarity, more physical stamina, strength, just emotional improvements, everything. It's absolutely amazing. So there's actually a list of supplements that I really recommend that have done just wonders for me. So I can only imagine they'd be great for you. A good quality multivitamin and multi-mineral. Find a brand that you trust. A good brand doesn't necessarily have to be really expensive. Some are just charging you for their advertising. But some of the cheaper ones probably you want to shy away from. Find a good quality one, do some research, find something in a midpoint, kind of a nice midpoint there. You want to, because of the virus, you definitely want to take some additional vitamin B12, vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc. Now, vitamin D, I'll just make a note here that if you're not going outside, you're not going to get as much vitamin D from the sun naturally. So you definitely want to take vitamin D, and even if you do go outside, you're still not going to get enough. So you definitely want to take a good quality vitamin D, as well as C, B. You also want to take zinc. Zinc is great. It's amazing, especially for viruses, colds. Really, really gives you that edge, especially if you do contract something. So these types of things you want to have before you come into contact with it, really. So I definitely recommend that stuff. Elderberry. Elderberry extract, you could buy it in a syrup, you could buy it in gummy bears. Really good for your immune system, just overall health. I also take liquid nascent iodine. This isn't those iodine tablets you have for like a nuclear disaster. It's liquid nascent iodine. And your body needs iodine. You die without it. Most people are deficient in it. It's the good halogen. There's all these bad halogens: fluoride, chlorine, bromide, bromine. And iodine's the only good halogen. Halogen's a column on the periodic table of elements. So there's only one of them that's good for you. The rest are bad. Most people don't have enough. Without iodine, you get thyroid problems. You get neurological deficiencies. So you definitely want to have a good supply of iodine. Besides that, for your health, you need to drink a lot of water, especially since you're not going out as much. You might not get thirsty as quickly, so you might not realize that you're dehydrated. So you definitely want to take in a good amount of water. And these are just general things you should do anyway, but something that you might miss even more so now that you're in lockdown and can't leave your house, or can't go to work or do your regular routine. So definitely recommend a lot of water. Good for your health as far as viruses and for fitness levels. Sunlight. Sunlight is a disinfectant. The UV rays kills viruses, gives you vitamin D. It makes you emotionally happier. I'm telling you, if it's a nice day outside, go outside, do something outside, go on a walk, go on a run. You definitely want to be outside in the natural environment of humans. So, because let me tell you, humans make beautiful houses. We make beautiful places to go inside, and that's lovely. But a certain percentage of your time you do need to spend outside. Get those primal kind of juices flowing. Fresh air, just like sunlight. You need fresh air. Don't just be cooped up in your house all day. Open a window. Those are such big things you could do, not just for your physical health, but you would be surprised what it does for your mental health as well. You need to keep that brain functioning, And one of the things you could do, you're probably bored if you don't go to work right now. Maybe you watched everything you want to on Netflix. You really need to keep your mind being in a state of expansion here, because otherwise it would just atrophy. It's like a muscle. A lot of people say that. I had math instructors who said this. Your brain is like a muscle, and it wants to soak up the information. So it's really important to do constant learning activities. Obviously, one that comes to mind first, probably for a lot of people, for me definitely, is books. Now, yeah, you could read Harry Potter, which is a good series, not dissing it. I'm a big fan of Star Wars, but to be honest, fiction is only imitating reality. And what you'd find, if you find good works of nonfiction, good works of reality, they become a lot more interesting than any fantasy you've ever heard of. And I just brought 3 examples here to share. Number 1, it's kind of a big book, might be a challenge, but it is probably the most rewarding thing you could ever read. And it is all encompassing, meaning you will learn about how society and power structures have originated from the dawn of mankind until the current day. And just a whole lot of interesting principles within all sectors of society and how it ties into a corporate world government. And that's Tragedy and Hope by Carroll Quigley. Carroll Quigley, read about him. He's not just a professor, but a researcher, a historian, and also a globalist. Not a good guy, but very, very intellectual. Wrote Tragedy and Hope. Great book. In a later podcast, actually, I'm going to talk about this book extensively. So if you guys want to get it right now and read ahead so you know what I'm about to talk about in a future podcast, please do. I don't think you'll be bored. Let's put it that way. It's big, it's daunting, but it is rewarding, and man, is there weird stuff in the world. Next one, Technocracy Rising. Do you want to know what technocracy is? Very interesting book. It's a thin book. It's an easy read. It's written very casually, but also very educationally. It's about the system of government called technocracy. Great book, easy read, as I said. Really fun, really crazy, even spooky. And speaking of spooky, we got The Creature from Jekyll Island. Creature from Jekyll Island, this book it sounds boring. You think of the financial sector and banks as, boring, monotonous. It's really not. It reads like a spy thriller, actually. It's completely, it's on point. It's all cited. There's the citations at the bottom of the page. But G. Edward Griffin, great author, wrote The Creature from Jekyll Island about the Federal Reserve Bank. You think it's boring. It's not. I mean, the book reads better than any Harry Potter or any book like that. You'd be astounded. So keep learning. Seriously, you don't want this to be a time of just wasted time. You want this to be a time of something you could actually look back on and say, hey, I used it to the best of my abilities and I became a better person, and you come out of this lockdown better than you went in. So, that's really my goal here, is to just share with you many different ways to do that. The other thing to become better than be better when you came out than when you went in is activities. And that's actually why I'm sitting right here next to this beautiful 1920s Singer sewing machine. This particular model, the Singer 66, came out in about 1904, I believe. And it's very similar to ones in the late 19th century. This particular model has a hand crank. Some of them have electric motors. Some of them have a treadle that you power with your feet. But the way I got this, it's actually interesting. So I got about 6 months ago a new Singer. It was this big, ugly beige thing, and it was too ugly to leave out in my living room, so I had to put it away each time when I wasn't using it. Well, every time I tried to use it, it would jam up. It took me 5 hours. It wasted my entire day just trying to sew a small little piece of something. So it was ridiculous. I packed it back up in the box and I returned it. It was a piece of garbage, cheap plastic, just one of the worst pieces of machinery I've ever seen. Maybe it had a defect. I don't know. It had a million different stitches, things you'd never use. So that was about 130, 140 bucks. I returned it, and I bought for the same price on eBay, obviously used, this perfect condition sewing machine. A Singer, once again, same brand, but this is a pleasure to use. It obviously just does the straight stitch, but that's all you really use. I mean, no one uses the weird like triangle diamond stitches. That's ridiculous. You just want to fix something. And this basically never jams up. When it does, it's very simple to unjam. It's very simple to use, simple to string up. And sewing machines are complicated, but why make it more complicated than you need to? And this is a beautiful work of art here. And they don't break, they don't wear out. You just put oil on them, and they always run. So what a pleasure to use. Same price as a new one. And if you look at the prices of these back then, adjusted for inflation, they were like $1,000. They were ridiculously expensive in today's money. So you're getting a really good deal on something like that these days. So you definitely want to keep activities and stuff. You definitely want to do something. And that takes me to a great outdoor activity. If you have a yard, if you have something that you could plant stuff in, start gardening, start growing. Get, delicious organic potatoes and organic onions at the grocery store. Leave them in your fridge for a little bit. They'll start to sprout. Leave them under a cupboard. They'll start to sprout. Read online about the best way to do it, but you could take those sprouts, put them in your garden, and grow delicious homemade vegetables, and it's so rewarding. It really takes you back to some of the primal urges, the primal kind of memories, genetic memories that we all have from all of our ancestors, because we are all of our ancestors put together, mixed together, and that's us. And then our descendants are us, percentages of us going into the future. So, humanity is a beautiful thing, and you really want to, harken back to some of those genetic memories that your ancestors did. Kind of like the Native American ghost dances. That's kind of what the purpose of that was. But just getting out there, planting some food in your garden, it's going to be so rewarding. Even if it doesn't turn into much, even if they die, you'll be glad that you're outside and doing something constructive like that. So as I said, you definitely want to have. You definitely want to have activities that you could do that are not just inside, not just watching Netflix. And but if you are going to stay inside, maybe you don't have a backyard. I know at the moment I don't. It's kind of a bummer. Something that I do regularly when there's not a lockdown. I tell you, I don't like to eat unnatural food. I don't like to eat cheap food. I like delicious things: pizzas, meat pies, cream puffs, lasagnas. And I make homemade noodles. I make homemade tortillas. I put all that stuff together myself because I only like to eat organic. You should too, especially when, you might have, what is organic? Means no pesticides, at least, less pesticides. They can't put them on. Maybe they blow over from another field. But the thing is, you really want to get your health in the best shape. So you might want to cook. Well, get a cookbook. Seriously, unless you're like a master chef, you're not going to know, I don't know, the percentages of everything to put into a noodle mixture or a pie crust mixture. I look it up every time, make sure I get it right. So a cookbook really, really aids in that journey, because so many things you won't really realize you could make so easily. Cream puffs are easier to make than pancakes from scratch, I learned. You wouldn't think so, but they are. The pudding you put inside, super simple. Lasagna noodles, pasta noodles, super simple. Tortillas for burritos, super easy. So these, and you'll never taste something as good as homemade food. So that's something that I want to drive home the most is that you make something, you have a reward of making it. This is specifically you. It's not just some big company, some big corporation that makes this food for you to eat, like you're a robot from Brave New World or something. And speaking of not being a robot, we don't want to live in, we have to enjoy our surroundings. We're not just going to sit in something that is, filthy or ugly or anything. So you'll be surprised at how much cleaning you wouldn't get to on a normal basis, underneath furniture, underneath couches, underneath beds, behind your toilet. You really want to use this time to make your humble abode a more enjoyable place to be, because you're going to be in it for a while, right? You pick an area one day and say, this area I'm going to get spotless. And the next day pick an area. And I read a book. Sometimes it's really hard to get to cleaning. It's just like the gym. Sometimes the hardest part about working out is getting there. Sometimes the hardest part about running is starting to run, putting on your running shoes, stretching, and getting out there. So there's no difference with cleaning. As long as you get there, just say, I'll spend 10 minutes on this. And after maybe 30 minutes, you'll realize, wow, I spent more, and now it's wonderful. But set small goals. They're a lot easier to reach that way, and a lot easier to surpass. But what do you think about all this, Quinn? What do you have to add?
Hey, I was just sitting back listening because before we had this podcast, we had a conversation where you said, my life is never boring. I haven't been bored in like 10 years. And it's only because you say that, and then I listen to everything that you've been talking about, and then it's something that people don't really realize. Like, they're bored at home, and they think all there is to do just to sit at home and watch Netflix, and they don't self-improve on themselves. And like a lot of things that I preach, even on my fitness side, is be better coming out of the quarantine than you went going into it. And the fact that you're giving all this great advice of what to eat, things to do about the nutrition wise, and how to keep yourself busy, I'm just sitting back enjoying everything, because it's like I could say all this, but it's coming from a different source, and now people are going to be more susceptible to it because it's not just me saying all these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of times, you might hear me or you dissing on, the internet, watching Netflix, and there is a lot of great things on the internet. For instance, as we were talking about free weight exercises, we were talking about body weight exercises. Go online and find body weight exercises that you could do. Obviously, things like push-ups, bridges, lunges, squats. But you'll be surprised at how many workouts, muscle workouts that you can get in without even having free weights. And then if you get some free weights, check out the exercises that you could do with that. Great lists on the internet. Another great thing on the internet, as I was talking about expanding your education, kind of your understanding of the world we live in, there's great YouTube videos, 5 to 10 minutes long, about science, history, just anything you could think of. So it's not bad to sit there watching videos online, but at least get something out of them that you could apply to real life, or just to expand your mind. We live in an amazing universe. So, don't kind of hinder yourself with just pure entertainment.
No, definitely. And I appreciate you coming on the show, Sean. For people that don't know, this is going to be a multiple part series. So this is just part one, what people can do when they're in the house bored or they don't have anything else going on. So I'm definitely going to have Sean back on the show, because if you guys don't know, he does his research, so he knows everything about the vaccines, from gender to population and all those sorts of things. So I will look forward to have you back on the show to talk about what we're going the next topic next time.
Hey, thanks a lot, Quinn.
Yes, no problem.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Q's Health and Wellness Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe or to leave us a review on iTunes or the listening platform of your choice. Also, please check us out at QuinnMitchellII.com, as well as find us on Instagram for more useful content and resources.